We're just weeks away from the grand opening of the brand new Fight or Flight comics in Raleigh, North Carolina. If you want to know more, you need to follow them on Instagram. Just go to comicsordope.com/comics. That's comicsordope.com/comics. All right, guys. So, actually, I decided to go pro today and actually get an intro to read to you guys so we can talk about my next guest. My next guest was born in Los Angeles, California, and raised in North Carolina. She's a 2016 graduate of Wake Forest University with a bachelor's in studio art and Spanish. She's an illustrator and comic book artist that creates traditional and digital works of art under her business, Art Studio LLC. She's worked with Lifetime TV, Adobe, and Dot Meredith. She's also had short comics published in the anthologies Won't Back Down, When I Was Young, and All You Can Eat. Look at me reading stuff like a pro for the first time. So with all that said, please welcome my next guest, Miss Ryan Oakley. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Super excited to chat with you, and I'm just happy to be invited as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're here. Now, we met just last month. It feels like forever ago, but Heroes Con 2024. I was there with my play cousin in my head, Stephanie, and we're just talking. and I'm she's asking me like how the con's going. I'm like, yeah, I'm chilling. I'm just, out here meeting people, having conversations and whatnot. She goes, "Oh, have you met Ryan yet?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "Okay, let me go take you over there." And so she runs me over and makes the introduction, and here we are.
Yes. Yeah. Gosh, to kind of talk a little bit about Stephanie, I remember when I was getting into comics, I remember finding her on Twitter. I was like big on Twitter, and just seeing all the work, even her own creator own, she kind of did on her own and just pushed it and did a crowdfunding for it, which was really cool because it was like a little spoof on living single.
Right.
So I finally got to meet her at a local con called Eastgate Comic Con here, and I was so excited, and it was cool because then she was like, "Oh yeah, I know of you. I've been seeing you," and then she looked at my artwork, and from there she was like, pushing me to do some fan art from Nubia. She was like, "No promises, but your work is great. You should at least do a piece. It'll be great for your portfolio at the very least." And so I made this awesome Nubia piece that ended up being my banner for a couple of years, and nothing came out of that, but like she said, it was a great portfolio piece, and it always stopped people, especially it being my banner. And so, yeah, it was kind of just meeting her has been kind of like a full circle moment for me. But then also recently getting to work with her on the anthology When I Was Young. We did a short 5-pager. So that was really cool.
Nice. Shout out to cousin Steph. So
that's right. Because
right. So funny enough, I found Living Heroes earlier. Again,
right.
we were talking offline about my office being crazy messy, and this is just one of the things that just happened to be nearby on the floor.
Yes.
Now it's on the desk.
Right, exactly. Right. I got my copies stowed away.
Nice. So we had a really cool conversation on the floor of the convention, and I wanted to kind of use that as sort of the basis of our conversation today, right? But I passed by your table a couple of times, but I wasn't familiar with your work. But as we're sitting there talking, I'm just kind of thumbing through your portfolio and looking at some of the art you've done. And it reminded me of some friends that I have that do like fine art and illustration. I've got friends that have done like different album covers, sometimes like political cartoons or like pieces for newspapers and stuff like that. And that's what your work reminded me of right off the bat. And you were telling me about how you of course, you do that fine art and illustration, and you're also doing comics and kind of trying to find a happy medium between the two. And I just thought that was an interesting angle because I mean, there's a lot of people in comics, especially minorities, but it's not specific to us, but who are juggling several jobs, just trying to string checks together to make things go. Um,
Mhm.
but I wanted to talk a bit about that. But I guess to get to that point, we got to sort of go to the beginning. So, what was your art journey like, and how did you find what you're doing now?
Yeah. So I tell everybody this. When I was younger, I thought I wanted to be an animator, and as I got older, I realized what was involved in that, and I was like, that's a bit too much. All the redrawing, the same thing, slightly different over and over. I was like, I don't know about that.
Right.
Um, and so then it evolved into other things like fashion, and then um, design as well. Just even in high school, I like designed T-shirts for like the International Baccalaureate class. My class, I designed our T-shirts. So I really just started exploring more so in high school, and it was in high school that I really got into collecting physical comic books. I'd always been into comics as far as like the animated series that everybody loves, like Spider-Man the animated series, Batman the animated series. That's kind of like how I got into comics. Um, so, but in that moment, I didn't think that I wanted to draw comics just yet.
Mm,
I think at that time I really thought I was going to be a scientist. I was a STEM kid. I was really good at math and science. And but I'd always loved art. I was always artistic, drew, did whatever, made my own art projects. And so when I went to undergrad, I was like, well, I want to be a different medical school applicant. So I decided to major in studio art and Spanish. Spanish was another course of mine that I was really good at, coming from middle school and then going into high school, and then I continued into college.
mm,
So that's kind of like where I was taking things. And it really wasn't until like maybe 2 years after I had graduated undergrad that I realized I didn't want to go to medical school. But while I was doing this post baccalaureate program at WashU in St. Louis, I started getting back into doing art. And I actually did an open call, and they were looking for bipartisan vote art to get people to go out and vote. And so I came up with this piece of a Black woman with cornrows, and she was like wrapping her hands as boxers do, but instead she was wrapping it with the American flag. And Oh my gosh, it escapes me. This piece is a little bit old, but I had something in the background. But oh, it was Fight for Your Rights. I had that in the background. So just incorporating some of those like design skills I had from undergrad, and my piece was chosen. So they had, oh my gosh, I forget the amount of submissions. I think they said 2,000 submissions,
mm.
and mine was picked along with 49 other people's artwork, and then they traveled the U.S. with that, and they passed them out. It was free. It was like a free public traveling art show, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and and from there, that's where I continued to get into more of the political art scene. I also made a poster for this young activist. Her name is Winter Brene. I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name. It's been some years. But I did a poster of her, and she was actually leading the national school walkout at
Mm,
the time. This was maybe 2017.
mm.
I'm thinking 2017, 2018. And I just made it. I didn't know her, but I saw that she was leading this. So I wanted kind of to commemorate her. And I
Yeah.
made this poster that said enough is enough. And it had her image in lotus flowers and then the breaking of a gun. and specifically the gun in question was the AR
Mm,
assault rifle. Um, she loved it and actually sent it to Amplifier Art, who liked it as well, and I think that's where my name blew up. As HuffPost got a hold of my piece and shared it. So many different celebrities shared it. I can't think of her name, but the actress who plays as Vixen in the CW show, she shared my poster. Um, an actor from, I think his name is Kendrick, actor from How to Get Away with Murder, he
mm,
shared it as well. So it was really cool that so many people connected with my artwork. And kind of fast forward after that, I started getting back into more of my like fine art background, but also trying to essentially like paint. Um, like how I did in undergrad, I used oils, but I just didn't have the space to do that. So I
mm.
got more into my digital background and was trying to paint and use these different textured brushes to create digital pieces that looked like traditional oil pieces or acrylic pieces. And from that, that is how I got commissioned by Lifetime TV,
Mm,
and they wanted me to create some portraits of, well, they call it Fierce Female Fridays, and they were recognizing women of color, but then they were also picking artists of color to create these pieces.
mm.
And that was an awesome project. And that led me to work with Adobe. They saw that project that I did, and they were like, "Yeah, we want you to use Adobe Fresco because it was new at the time." And it's so funny because um, I think I attended HeroesCon for the first time in 2019, and Kyle Webster was there, and
Mm.
I got to meet him. So that was cool because I had been using his stuff, his brushes and Photoshop for a while at the time, which we don't, some of us aren't talking about right now.
Right.
But he was talking about Adobe Fresco, so it was cool that I got commissioned in 2020 to work and use Adobe Fresco, and so I got to create a tutorial and also create a piece that they featured on Beyonce and Adobe. So
Nice.
yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling,
You good.
um, but yeah. So after Adobe, during that time I was trying to get myself more into comics. While I was doing that project, I was also doing like comic pinups and just figuring out what I wanted to do in the comic space. Was it,
Mm,
did I want to do comic pages or did I just want to be the pinup cover artist type
right.
person? And I kind of grappled with that for a minute, and it wasn't until a year and a half ago that I was like, I'm going to try comic pages. Everybody wants me to do comic pages. Everybody asks me to do comic pages. So I'm going to try this out.
Right.
And there's definitely a learning curve,
Hmm.
uh, especially if you're trained at doing just one composition,
Right.
whereas comic book pages, it's one composition, but then it's broken up into smaller compositions that have to flow together. So
Hmm.
figuring that out on my own was pretty interesting, and I'm still figuring it out.
Right.
But I'm excited to continue with it, and I love the feedback that I'm getting from people, and yeah, I'm ready to jump in more, especially
Yeah.
when I have more time. But
Right.
gotta work that day job.
For sure. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that sort of learning curve, going from traditional to more sequential art. But before that, I want to talk about your relationship with comics, right? So, like, you went to high school in Greensboro. I went to college in Greensboro. And I always tell this story, so I won't tell the whole story now. But the short version of it is I somehow didn't know comics like really existed until I was an adult. Like after college, after all that, I went to a free comic book day event. This would have been 5, 6 years ago with my oldest daughter as an
Mhm.
exercise to get her into like seeing art as a career. And so they had all these fine artists and sculptors and stuff. I walk into a comic shop and somehow come out with a weekly shopping habit. But
Mhm.
when I was a kid, my grandmother lived in New York. So for the summers, we'd go to New York, and that's where I saw comics. I never saw them in Raleigh, where I grew up. Um,
Mhm.
and then even like where you would shop for comics, like there's a spot maybe, maybe 5 miles from where I went to college and like 2 miles from your high school.
Yep.
Again, I did not know it existed until
Mhm.
3, 4 years ago, but I imagine it was there the whole time, sitting on Battleground, right?
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with comics growing up? Like, were you always aware of them?
I was not. Um, Gosh, and you know what? I really cannot remember who put me on Tag Me Comics, but I'm gonna say
Mm-hmm.
my neighbor Frank, just because Frank, at the time when I was in middle school, moving into high school, he oh my gosh, has the biggest comic book collection, at least that I have seen.
Right.
And especially back then, like I was buying a couple here and there at Acme Comics, and I remember before Jermaine up there, before he really knew me, he would be like, because I would always get the back issues and stuff like that and dig through and try and find some like old ones, especially like old covers that like Adam Hughes did. And he'd be like, "Wait, there's a trade that's got all of them in there." And I'd just be like, "Boy, leave me." Like in my mind, I'm like, "Leave me alone." Like I'm trying to find my covers that I care about. I'm trying to be the
Right.
next cover artist. Which is so funny. And now Jermaine is like one of my good friends here, and he gives me a lot of advice about comics and helps me. But yeah, I would say Frank, and Frank actually gave me a lot of comics. He was a big fan of DC and George Perez, his run on Teen Titans and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I didn't know. And then once I kind of got into the Acme family, that's when I started finding out about all these different stores that were here. Like I think the one you're talking about is Parts Unknown, which is like right on UNCG's campus. It's like
Hmm.
so close to Tate Street. And so I I've gone to all of them, I think, pretty much at this point. But yeah, I agree. In the smaller cities, it is a little bit harder to find your local comic book shop if you just don't know or if somebody isn't pointing you to it. So yeah, that's kind of like how I guess came across Acme. Oh God, and then they back in the day for Halloween. Um, I don't know if they gave away stuff, but people would go up there on Halloween dress up as their character. So I
Hmm.
did. My favorite character was Raven at the time from Teen Titans. So I remember I dressed up as Raven for high school, and then I went over to Acme to go buy some Raven comic books or
Hmm.
or Batgirl, one of those. But at the time, the new 52, when they were redoing all those different characters at DC, that's when I got into it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And comics are such an insular hobby, right? So you're lucky that someone sort of invited you in, right? Like
Hmm.
I've been shopping at the same comic shop for the last 5 years, and I feel like I can count on one hand the number of different people I see there. I go the same day every week. It's the same crowd early in the morning. It's a different crowd
Yeah.
later in the evening, but either way, it's the same 10 people, you
Right.
know. And it's not until, I think for me, that's why YouTube has been so big because it's like without the internet, who would I talk about this stuff with?
Right. Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so you got the bug. You were already an artist, but you're like, all right,
Hmm.
I want to do some comic covers. you're making headway into like a career as an illustrator, but you're still like, yeah, but comics though. What
Hmm.
keeps pulling you back? Why are comics so important to you?
Um, I think it's just a unique medium to tell stories. And I think it also gets put in this place of as this is for kids. Um, when it is, but it's also for all ages,
Right.
I think. And I also think it's also a form of high art as well. And those are the things that I kind of even talked about in high school with like the international baccalaureate program I did. I had to write an extended essay, and I wrote mine on uh, comics. You know, why do we consider comics low art? But we had this huge movement of pop art that specifically ripped pages from comics and made
Mm,
it high art, essentially. And I'm specifically talking about Liechtenstein, who did steal panels from actual romance comics
mhm.
back in the day and repainted them, and then it gets called this most magnificent thing, but the source material gets deemed as underground for kids, and even back then it was going through different things. People didn't want kids reading comics; they thought they were bad for them and all this stuff. That's when the Comics Authority, all that stuff got started. I'm sure around that time. So yeah, I came across all these different pinup artists, Vargas, who else? Oh my gosh, their names are escaping me. But if we even look at Rockwell, I mean, the
Mhm.
type of art that Rockwell did was a form of storytelling. Um, and even advertisers who were creating work that was commercial, even they have been able to, I guess, get their dues as far as being considered high art. If you look at Rockwell, and then even his predecessor, oh my gosh, his name is escaping me. Oh my god, I know all these names, but of course when you need the name, you don't get it.
Of course
We
not.
don't want to pop up. And I was just talking about him the other day because a lot of people don't know about him. He was kind of like an influence for Rockwell. Oh my gosh. And he had a show at Wake Forest recently. I went to see it. Linedecker, JC Linedecker.
Mm,
Great. If you look at his work, very illustrative, even his mark making. It's just it's just awesome. And now they're kind of getting their dues. I don't know if they necessarily were as revered as they are now. I'm sure their work was probably just seen as commercial advertisement. But back then, commercial advertisement was like the big sexy job, being
right.
a artist for advertisements. So yeah, I feel like it's such a great medium and it gets a bad rap. And I just feel like so much can be done, like
Mhm.
similar to how animation just gets put into this box of it's only animation, but no, animation can be all these different genres. You can have animated horror, animated comedy, animated,
Right.
um so I feel the same way happens with comics, and I think it's just one a great way to get people reading, because who
Mhm.
doesn't like pictures with words?
Right.
Um, and it's just a cool way to show stories as well. Prose is awesome, but it like I said, it's different when you have an image to go with it, and also an image that you can relate to, like a
Mhm.
character that kind of looks like you or reminds you of yourself. And it's a way to for people to connect further to stories.
Yeah, for sure. Nah, it's crazy because people definitely put comics in this box like it's for kids.
Hmm.
And maybe it's because I'm a dad and I'm like hypersensitive, but like most comics that I see are not for kids at all. You know, like
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think that's part of the reason. I wouldn't say comics are dying. That's a crazy take. But I feel like the audience for comics could be bigger if we
Yeah.
did a little bit more to sort of bridge between generations. If, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, feels like we are taking a very conservative approach, just in the literal sense of the word. Like, let's keep this audience we have
Yep.
and hope it doesn't shrink, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I feel like if we sort of made some bridges to new generations, right? Maybe take some cues from other forms of entertainment and stuff. This will be around for more
Mm-hmm.
generations. I don't think
Oh
comics will
yeah.
ever really leave, but I do want to see them like not exist outside of a specialty shop, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Look at
I
manga.
right, right. I'm take
You know, like I mean.
I go to Target, right, and there's just walls and walls of tankobons. And then they've got this
Mm-hmm.
one little display, and it's got like the DC encyclopedia, the Marvel encyclopedia, and like a Ninja Turtles book. And
Yep.
that's the comics,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yep.
So I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
that over the next few years, and I feel like both of the publishers are doing things to try to get, you know, make headway in that way. Like DC's
Yeah.
got those compact comics now. For $10,
Mm-hmm.
you can get like all of Far Sector or all of Watchmen, or,
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see how things shape up in the next few years.
Yeah, I
But
think so too. I'm hopeful.
for sure. So okay, so you're into fine art, and I don't know, this is a podcast. It's hard for me to describe an art style for the
Mm-hmm.
audio listener. Um, but if you've ever seen, this is such a throwback, right? So if you guys have ever seen the movie The Parent Trap with Lindsay Lohan and also Lindsay Lohan and Dennis
Mm-hmm.
Quaid and the mom, whose name escapes me, right? The
Yeah.
mom on that show is a fashion designer, and she does like these fashion drawings. She's doing these sketches of clothes. I don't know why that's the image in my head, but that is absolutely partly what your art reminds me of. Like it's part
Yeah.
like it's part like newspaper illustration, it's part fashion design. Um, but you
Mm-hmm.
work in a number of mediums. You've got pastels and watercolors, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of like ink wash in a lot of the stuff I've seen you doing
Mm-hmm.
lately. Um, but your style, I guess, for lack of any better terms, right? It feels like it's meant for display at a gallery, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it feels very much high art, and then it really just depends on sort of the subject of your composition. Like that kind
Mm-hmm.
of draws you in. Like, oh snap! Like it's all it's just like how Kehinde Wiley's work, right? Like
Yeah, I used
it's a
to love him. Mm-hmm.
it's a different art style, right? Like he's doing like these sort of Renaissance paintings, but then they're like black dudes from the street, and you're like, oh snap! Like who is that drawing that guy like that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of the feeling that I get from your art.
Yeah.
How would you define your style, and how did you find it?
Gosh. Okay, so one, Parent Trap used to be one of my favorite movies. I used to wear that movie out. Like it used to come on NBC Family. I used to love Lindsay Lohan. So that's so funny you bring that up. But I that is one of the parts of the movie that I did love was the mom being a fashion designer, and I love seeing her designs how they showed it, even though they're not hers. But I
Right.
wonder whose designs those were. Um, but so yeah, and then the second part to your question, you know, I don't know what I would describe my style as, but I like kind of like what you were saying because then it's kind of like bringing me back to um just like my extended essay, how I've been trying to show that comic book art can be high art. So it's cool that you're kind of in a way picking up on that.
Mm,
But oh gosh, honestly, I feel like I just came into my style, to be honest. Like that was something I used to stress out about. I was like, I don't have a style. I'm not recognizable. Like I don't
mm,
know what I'm doing. And and I think I stopped thinking about that and I just started experimenting and drawing how I wanted to draw. Um, Before 2019, I never really did color traditionally. So especially with watercolor, I never touched watercolor. And I just picked it up. One of my friends, Bailey, Bailey Powell, she's actually in the anthology All You Can Eat. Um, she kind of put me on to watercolor. Like they give you, that's like one of the things they give you as part of your intro options, like watercolor and gouache. But I never really explored it as far as like doing representational things. I was always
Mm,
really good at doing abstract pieces. Um, but yeah, it is interesting that this is what I've come to, but I think you get your style from what I like to call art parents and
mm,
pulling the different things from people that you like, you know. Um, I like how Steel Freeze can create, translucency and these layers with his colors. Even though he's not necessarily using watercolor, he uses acrylic inks, but he's
mm,
using it like that. And all these different artists, I try and pull from someone else for their how they do their line, or how they tackle shape, or how they tackle hands. Gosh, there's so many artists out there that I've kind of pulled and see how they've kind of solved certain problems. Like I
mm.
call the hands a problem, the feet a problem, that need to be solved.
Right.
And so yeah, I try and look at and then even if I find a more contemporary current artist, I try and search their history and see what artists influenced them, and then I get to their root, because then you can really like pull for yourself what they're getting from it, from the true source. um so a lot of comic book artists love, Rockwell and Line Decker, but because of those reasons, like I said, they were creating stories within their one piece.
Mm,
um but yeah, I would honestly, I know I'm not really describing how I got mine, but as far as I can give some advice to
mm,
people, and I would say don't stress out about it. Just draw what you want to draw, and draw what inspires you, and eventually, you'll come to your style. But it's really all about experimenting, and I'm still experimenting. Um, Hopefully the stuff I'm doing now looks completely different 10 years later. That's the goal. So.
right. Right. So I was listening to an interview that Aletha Martinez did, and I hadn't even listened to the whole thing yet, but someone was asking her about influences, and she made this a comment somewhere in the vein of like, I can't really be bothered with influences, right? Like, and it
Mhm,
wasn't meant as a disrespect, but she was kind of, it was like a caution. She was like,
mhm.
if you remind them too much of someone,
Yep. Mhm,
then they're not going to see the value in you, and they'll just move right on to whatever the next thing is. How
mhm,
are you sort of paying homage to what's come before while maintaining your sense of self?
mhm. Oh gosh, that's a really good question. And she brings up a great point. Yes. Um, I guess, for me, oh yeah, that's a really good one. Um, I guess I can answer the second part. How I'm staying true to myself, I guess is drawing what I like. I think for me, like I like, I pull similar ideas, like Adam Hughes. I think he calls his girls, doesn't call them realistic, but naturalistic. Like it still has this illustrative look, but um, you can tell he's pulling from real life influences to create light, shadows, all that different stuff.
Mm,
And I'd like to say I try to do that with my work. But I like my characters to look real, in a sense. And they, for me, they all look a little ugly because I feel like everybody isn't 100% gorgeous, you know? And
Right.
I think that's why a lot of people kind of like my pieces because they look like real people in a
Hmm.
sense, or like they could be a real person. And I think they pick up on those flaws, but the flaws aren't distracting. It just humanizes them.
Right.
Um, so, but as far as paying homage to them, I think I do that by using them as our parents, not necessarily like copying them,
Right.
but kind of studying them and learning what they've done and then taking it a step further, as far as for myself.
Hmm.
And but I completely agree, because especially when I was doing some these comic pages recently, it was stressing me out, and I was like, you know what? These pages gonna get done how Ryan does them. So like
Hmm.
there's that you're gonna draw them how you draw them. There's no point, especially in that time period. There's no point in stressing yourself out about having it look a certain way. Like this is how you're drawing in this moment, and that's how it's gonna get done.
Right.
Period.
Right. Right. So, I guess on that note, on paying homage, right? Like I think Michael Jackson used
Hmm.
to say, "Study the greats and become greater." Right? Like
Yep.
you got to
Exactly.
know what came before. You got to like at the very least, like in music, they'll tell you to read the manual for all the machines that you're using, right? Like
Hmm.
because like once you learn the rules, then you can break them the right way, right? But you
Yes.
do have to still be well studied. And some people
Hmm.
do and some people don't, right?
Right.
But then even to your note about style, like this is going to be done the way I want to do it, right? Like one of my friends
Hmm.
that I was talking to, I don't know if she likes her name being used in public. So her art name is PS. It's PS I'm dope
Hmm.
on Twitter. But she did like the Ninth Wonder album cover for the Wonder Years. She did the cover for
Oh
Wale's
yeah.
Ambition.
Oh
And
wow, yeah.
during right around the time you were graduating high school is when she was sort of traveling around. She would go to these concerts and she would
Hmm.
do a piece of an artist and then try to give the piece to that artist.
Hmm.
And she made a lot of headway just doing that. But what's funny is like, she got sort of notoriety for doing these very specific like portrait
Yep.
headshots. And after she gained notoriety doing that, there was like this wave of like just super hyper realistic drawings on Instagram. Like people
Mm.
taking those pencils and like just for days and days on end drawing like every pore in the skin and all that, like just crazy
Yeah.
stuff. And
Hmm.
I remember seeing her post at one point, like, yeah, I know y'all keep tagging me in this, but that's not me. Like her style, she would do a lot of cross hatching. And she's like,
Hmm.
I'm going to keep my cross hatching until I cannot anymore. Like this is just going to be me. It's not going to be, perfect. It's not going to be whatever because that's just what I like to do.
Right.
And I think it's cool to be able to see the value in something that's being done, but still make an artistic choice to say, but I'm doing this. I'm going this way though.
Right. Right. And yeah, I definitely relate to that. Because I feel like my work is similar. I think people can see my influences, but like it's just so different. It's not your typical ink down comic piece
Mhm.
at all. And I that is something I have, thought about. Well, maybe I do need to get more into blacks and inking, but in this moment, this is me, and I want to take the watercolor and mixing it with color pencils and different things. I want to take it as far as I can go with it before I start thinking I need to do something else. But yeah, yeah, no, I love that. Yeah.
Right. And so I guess where you're taking watercolors and pencils, right? You've gotten some work in a few comics anthologies. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about maybe one of those and maybe what you learned from making that jump into sequential art?
Yeah. So the um the first one I got into, a friend of mine, Bridget Connell, she sent it to me because she knew I was trying to get into doing more comic pages, and that was like a lot
Mm,
for me. Just even like look staring at a blank page and trying to figure out, okay, how am I supposed to put all of this onto this page and make it readable and have it flow and all this stuff, and I don't know anything.
mm,
So but I did a little bit of I did well, I did research as fast as I could, and like I said, I just drew it how Ryan could draw it in that moment, and they're rough looking back,
mm.
but I made it,
Right.
and that is something that I realized that I need to do is I just need to do, and that's what a lot of I think a lot of young artists get caught up on is like, well, I'm not ready to do, I need to do da da da, when you really just need to do,
Mm,
and you learn from just doing as well, especially with art in even now I've done like a little 8 pager of my own work. Now I've written, um, drawn and lettered my own piece, but I wouldn't have done that had I not taken that first step or with the Won't Back Down anthology. And I'm so glad I'm able to I was able to be a part of it. And so after that, I mean, like I think I saw Stephanie again after I'd done that project, and she was like, "Oh, these are great. This is perfect." And so I think that's what kind of got her realize, okay, Ryan's serious about doing some comic pages because from the last time I saw her, she didn't have any, and now I got them. So
right.
now she's got them, like so. And those are things that some of these young artists need to think about too. Is like, you know, if it's something you want to do, you got to just do it and show people that this is something you want to do. And but yeah, it's a um, it's a very daunting process when you get into it. But I think once you start going, it's awesome. Like now, I'm ready to redo those pages, that
Mm.
8 pager I just did, and like do the full story. So it just gets you more pumped, and I'm ready to see myself improve more as I continue to do them. Like now I'm ready to do like not just 8, let's do 16 pages and keep going and add 8 more and 8 more. So yeah.
So you've got the battery in your back, right? You've gotten your feet wet, so to speak, and
Mhm.
now you're like, all right, let's do it. So I want to know, what are some of your like more immediate goals? What are you trying to get into the next few years?
Um, I want to do. I want to continue my story with my character Demeter, who's in the anthology All You Can Eat. I want to get a full 32 pager out for that. And then I think I also want to get into horror.
Mm,
I want to do a horror story. But I want to do stories that center minorities. Um, we don't get a lot of westerns with minorities as the main characters. We don't get a lot of horror with minorities as the main character. So I wanna that's kind of been like my main goal with my art is to break stereotypes, and to put people who normally wouldn't be in certain spaces, to put those in those spaces, um, because it's all the genres that I do love, and the reason why I did do want to do a Western story is because I kind of grew up with them in the background. My dad's grew up watching Lone Ranger when he was little,
mm,
and it's kind of cool for him to like learn that the Lone Ranger was based off of a black man, Bass Reeves,
mm,
who was the first bounty hunter or sheriff, one of the two, or both. And but there aren't any people of color in those stories and those shows like Gunsmoke and all these other ones he used to watch. And even like the sci-fi, we both bond on sci-fi stories, and rarely do they have people of color, making, let alone making it to the end.
Hmm.
Um, rarely do they have them in those stories. So, I want to create something that represents myself and then my family. We're all a bunch of nerds, so um, you know, it's when you're watching these different shows that don't feature minorities, it's kind of disheartening because it's like, well, you don't picture us being in the future, you know.
Right.
Um, that's what I want to get into more of. So y'all hit me up if y'all got some stories, and if not, I'm gonna write them.
Right. As you should. As you
Yeah.
should. I saw a tweet one time and it was like fantasy is black people not existing in the past, and sci-fi is black people not existing in the future. And I was like, that is terrible, but it's
It's
kind of
so
true.
bad. It is. Oh my gosh.
Twitter is so unserious, but
Oh my gosh, it can get me in trouble.
right.
Um,
So, and this question's kind of out of left field, but not really, right? So, Adobe's had some things going on as of
Mhm.
late, right? Like we're learning that they're training people, training their AI off people's stock art and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff, right? Like just crazy stuff. But something I thought was interesting was you put up a post and you were just like, all right, that's it. I'm not using Adobe anymore. Right. Like,
Hmm.
and maybe it's
Yep.
just, maybe it's because you're an artist. Maybe this is easier for you because you're an artist. But for me, as
Mm,
like a content creator, I don't know where I would be without the Adobe suite.
yeah.
And it is so like, I dread even trying to start. Like, I wouldn't know what to do with Clip Studio. I wouldn't know what to do with DaVinci Resolve. What gives you that confidence to say like it's not about the tool, it's about me using it?
Oof, that's a good question, dude. These are all really good questions. Um, honestly, oh God, I think for me, I feel like I'm always in this phase of having to learn a new medium or even wanting to learn a new medium. As far as like with art traditionally, that I just think it hasn't changed when I'm thinking about working digitally. Now I understand, like I've played around with Premiere and it was nice using the Creative Suite when I did the tutorial because I used some of that editing software. So I completely understand and will not fault people for using it until they find something else or even just continuing to use it.
Mm,
My main thing was I don't want to support them until there is some sort of legislature or I don't know. It just needs to be a little bit more ethical than what is going on right now.
mm,
And the use of AI, how it is as is not ethical for artists at all. Um, but I'm also just like hard headed. Like I'm a full on like Aries. Like you can't tell me I'm not gonna be able to do something. And if
mm,
you do, that's your worst thing to say to me is to tell me that I can't do something because I'm gonna prove you wrong 10 times out of 10.
mm,
There's no 9 out of 10. Um, and I think it's also just me. I've just been always very outspoken. Whether injustices have been done to myself or to other people around me, I just can't sit by and allow that to happen. And I felt like I was in a position um, to speak out against them, and other people have. I mean, with Kyle Webster leaving, I think that was like huge.
yeah.
He made Photoshop what it is today.
Mm,
And if you go back and do some research on his story, Photoshop kind of did him dirty in the beginning when he was first creating the brushes and stuff like that. So They didn't think it was a good idea,
Mm,
and look at them now. So
right.
yeah. So yeah, I think, and I'm always excited. I think that this is gonna inspire someone else to create the next best thing too. So I'm always willing to move forward and put aside things that are harmful, but if they're willing to make a change, I'll definitely pick them up. Now I won't say that I'm outright not using them because I gotta transfer
Yeah.
my processes over. But
Right.
as far as promoting them and keeping my work up there on their Beyonce, however you pronounce it,
Mm,
it's a no for me. It's a no
yeah.
for me, dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a liability. I wouldn't if
Yeah.
if I was creating work like original work. I mean, my stuff is photo
Yeah.
manipulation, right? But if I if I was sitting there drawing pictures and then put it on the website and now it's like, hey, give me a horse in the style of Ryan Oakley, like I'd be like, hey, yo, what you mean?
hmm Oh yeah, actually.
Right.
And I've been doing that. Like I remember seeing people, oh gosh, I remember the first TikTok I saw, and it was like comic book characters and or certain things in Alex Ross's style. And I was like, y'all, this is so unethical. Like
Right.
he did not approve of this.
Right.
So yeah.
So I mean, hopefully they figure out the whole AI thing better than the music industry did when piracy started like really becoming a
hmm
thing with the internet, right? Like hopefully
Yeah.
they find ways, whether it's royalties, like something, right? I think the biggest thing is
hmm
like, because like, in the music industry, there's people who have consented to having their voices used in that way. And it's like, I'll get a share of the royalties, or hey, here's a contest for my fans. You can do a song and feature me on it. Best one wins,
hmm
whatever, right? Like I think there are ways to use the tools
I agree.
that work, but yeah, there's got to be some sort of regulation around it because
Yeah,
right now
there's got to
everybody's
be
seeing,
consent.
yeah, because everybody's seeing
hmm
dollar signs right now, and they will go, they'll take the shortest route to a dollar.
hmm
So,
Yeah, and I think I saw gosh, I don't know where I saw it on Facebook, but it was from an article. But they could kind of they've been comparing AI to the boom of internet and the computers when they were created, and essentially they were saying like it's not AI right now is not solving enough problems for it to be useful in the future and for how much um, it's costing. It costs environmentally to
mhm,
power AI. It's not worth it. Whereas computers solved so many more problems that the value of it outweighed. And right now, AI just even if you look at it in terms of that, it really serves. It's not solving any problems at this
right,
point. It's just creating them.
yeah. And that feels like the last 10 years of technology in general, right? Because before this, it
hmm
was the blockchain and NFTs and,
Yeah.
like all these
And
different
look where
things
that
that,
went.
right, right. But, well, I don't know.
No,
We're humans. We'll figure it out eventually.
we will, you know.
Right. Well, that
Yeah.
was a fun aside. Are there any
Yeah.
projects you've got upcoming that you want to promote?
Um, right now I don't. I'm doing some projects for friends. I'm doing a poster gig for some friends I gotta work on, and then low commission for a friend, and then hopefully something for an indie creator that who I've already worked with. I know they reached out, but at the time I was busy. So yeah, it'll be more so commissions and then my own work. I don't know if I'll be doing any more cons
Mm,
the rest of the year. I think I'm just gonna do some like local zine fests and plan for 2025.
nice. That sounds like a good
hmm
plan. Sounds like a good
Yeah.
plan indeed. So, for those who want to follow your exploits, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Ryan Oakley Art, just my name and art at the end. And honestly, that's the best place. You don't need to follow me on Twitter. I don't be talking about nothing. So
Listen, this is
just follow me
proud.
on Instagram. You can see my art. You can see all the stuff we were talking about today there. And yes, go there.
Nice.
I'll even chat with you.
Nice. Well, I will link to Ryan's Instagram in the show notes and the description of this video. Well, Ryan, it was great meeting you at Heroes Con. It was great having
Yes.
this conversation. I'm really glad you came on.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No problem. No problem at all. And with that, I don't know what you're doing after you listen to this, but stay safe, stay awesome, and read something dope today. Peace.